Hi, I'm Everett. Welcome back to the shop. This is part 2 of the Shaper Reassembly series. Again, I'm not sure how many videos there are going to be in this just because I keep finding surprises as I go in. More parts that are broken or missing or need to be fixed or whatever. Now before we start getting back to the Shaper, there are a couple things I wanted to mention before we get going. And first off is a little bit of mail I got in the last week and a bit here. And a letter here from Tom Knopp down in North Carolina. And he sent me a printout of a really cool article on shapers, an Alba 1A shaper that this one fellow is working on, and it's been really good reading through this, and some of the similar struggles that this fellow went through I have with mine. And well, again, there's a lot on mine I'm having to go through and redo. So thank you, Tom, for that as well. He sent me one of his new stickers. I got one of his original stickers up on the sticker board there, but he sent me one of these new ones. This is going to go up there too, so thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. And speaking of stickers, I also got another letter this week, and this is from down California. Yucca Valley. And, well, quite warm down there according to these guys. And yeah, from Active Atom, Lance and Patrick, and they sent me a couple of the little stickers with the little dudes on there, Active and Atom, and a couple of these sort of aluminized ones with the two-part stickers. Now, yeah, guys, I'm impressed. After having to have stickers being made more than once, I know what these cost, like for the style I do, and dude, you guys really went all out on this one. So they look good though, I'll give you that. And what's kind of cool is they threw a little note in with each of the stickers as well. I've seen some of the other guys on YouTube get these as well, and that's kind of cool. It gives a little bit of background for them and where their sticker ideas came from. So anyway, again, these will go up on the board too, so thanks fellas, appreciate it. Now one other thing I wanted to mention this time is a sticker that was sent to me a few months ago by Anthony down in Alabama. He's been making some really cool things over the last few weeks and taking video of it and getting better and putting stuff together. His shop is called Ragsdale Creek Workshop. I'll put a link in the description below. I'll also put a link in the description for Tom's site as well as Lance and Patrick. And yeah, I highly recommend you go check him out. He's got some cool ideas. I mean, he was working in machining before things happened for him. So he's got some smarts to him. It's really cool to watch what he comes up with. So otherwise, what we're going to do here is we're going to get back at getting this shaper back together. Again, we're going to come across a few surprises going through. We'll have to make a few parts. And yeah, hope you find it interesting. So the last parts that came out of the machine are going to need to be the first parts to go back into the machine. The bull gear spindle bearing housing mounts to the side of the case, the main housing. As we took it apart, we indexed with a center punch where the bull gear spindle goes onto the bull gear. One thing I noticed on the bull gear here, however, is, and I'll try to get it up close so you can see, I don't know if you can see that, there are some pretty serious dings in this thing. I don't know why there would be, just because of where it sits. I don't know why there would be, but anyway, I tried spinning it into here, and it actually feels kind of rough and scratching going in. What we're going to do is we'll spin this up in the lathe and see if we can polish it a little bit. I don't want to take off very much. I just want to see if I can take the dings off so it doesn't damage the bearing anymore. It's handy as we have a center point in the end from the factory, so we can snug up against that. Again, I just want to take the high spots off. To do that, I'm going to start off by using the stone. It's funny how people mentioned about the hockey pucks for the feet. Honestly, I really kind of suck at hockey, but and so here I'm using hockey pucks for the feet on both the lathe and the shaper. And this little stone here is actually a skate sharpening stone. I don't exactly know what grade it is, but it really doesn't feel all that abrasive or all that rough. I mean, to sharpen a skate, you want to make sure that it's not super rough either, so it's probably about a medium of some type. I'm just going to use it to take the high spots off, because theoretically it should skate for the most part, sorry for the bad pun, over the smoother areas and try to hit the nubs. Kind of like what the guys are doing with the precision ground stones on tables and such, tables of milling machines. I'm hoping that I'm going to get the same sort of effect on this, because I mean, I don't know if you can see that there, but there's a really nasty bunch of ding marks there. We'll see how this goes. So just try to keep my fingers out of the way. Again, the reason I wanted something rigid is if I was using sandpaper or something like that with my finger, I don't know if it would actually hit the high spots, but it would, you know, wouldn't be as even. So I just went over the shaft here a couple more times with the stone. Then we're just going to give it one final polish with the Scotch-Brite. I'm holding it very loosely. If it were to snag, I could just let go. There. Try to get it as smooth as possible. And I'm sure that probably took a couple tenths off of it, whatever. I will ensure to keep this thing lubed up, that's for sure. There we go. Well, that's about as smooth as it's going to get. Again, it's going to have some lube in it, so this little piece of masking tape is covering the oil lube port. I didn't want to have to strip paint off of it. And you'll notice there are a couple spots where paint is missing. It's a little thin here and there. This part here only got its first coat. This is one of the pieces that needs to be assembled to the main body before the main body and the base get its second coat. But for now, I'm happy with that. Well, I'd be happier if the shaft wasn't dinged at all, but that's going to have to work. So this is one of those situations where, you know, if something looks silly but works, is it really silly? My tripod's on loan, it wouldn't have fit in this corner anyway. So what I wound up doing was actually taking a half-ton truck axle and adapting a piece of angle iron to it with a clamp, and that's what's holding up my camera at the moment. So I'll get my tripod back at some point, no big deal. Now, I did not paint these flange surfaces on purpose, simply because it's a mating surface to another housing that goes on. I didn't want the paint causing any sort of misalignment. You know, I don't know how much issue it would have caused, but I figured just let's avoid the problem anyway. So. There, good enough. While we're at it, let's do the back side of here. Take that little area that's painted off. Make sure it lines up that way. Yeah, the paint's only a few days old, so it's not really cured yet. That's for sure. There. Good enough. Now, before we put these bolts in, I want to make sure that those thread holes are clean. Now, truthfully, I am a little nervous because these are carbon steel taps, not high speed, but they're pretty much what was available on Amazon when I was looking for tools. And I figured just for cleaning out threads that, you know, carbon steel should be okay just for cleaning threads. Alright, good. So we now know these holes are clear for when we need to assemble this housing to the main body. Now, one thing I'm going to also do is use some blue Loctite on the threads of all the little socket head cap screws that hold the bull gear in place. So there's our shaft. Now the tricky bit here is to try getting this bull gear, because, well, it's not massively heavy like a flywheel on a Dodge pickup. It's also certainly not the lightest, that's for sure. There we go. So there's that. And where's our ding mark? Is right there. Ding mark is there. So let's take our socket head cap screws. And just gonna finger tighten them in for now. One hand that one. And I think I see where all the ding marks on that shaft came from. I betcha that as people pulled that housing off, that it fell on the casting. A little piece of cardboard to set the shaft on. Now, gently. Come on. Use the bolts to jack it into place. Socket head cap screws, I should say. I guess technically that would be a cap screw. Now, I'll be honest, this is awkward. There. Now that can sit. Carefully let it down. Oop. Okay, good. There we go. Looking inside here, I can see that it's now seated. And because I'm not really going to be able to get a torque wrench in here anyway, there. I figure a 3/8 inch impact will be tight enough. I mean, it's not, oh, seriously? It's not the kind of stress as you'd expect out of something like a head bolt or a, you know, it's not like a high speed thing. Now, as I'm doing anything like this, I'm with the impact wrenches and power tools, I'm leaning it away from the shaft. Leaning the tool away from the shaft. There we go. Now, I'm going to set that down again. Oh, okay. Whew. Okay. So the next step is we're going to take and support the bull gear shaft again. We'll slide our bull gear shaft bearing on, well, the bearing block. Try not to bump the housing at all. There we are. And in go the bolts to hold it on. I'm not worried about Loctite on these ones. Biggest reason is I can actually get a wrench on these to feel them after. I just have no way of holding the bull gear really where it's sitting. Kind of an interesting way they assembled it. So that's where we go. Nice. All right. So again, I can actually feel these ones. That's good. Good. There we go. Now, a number of you may have noticed that I did not actually put lube on this when I assembled it. I did that on purpose. I'm going to have to put a second coat of paint on this thing, and I didn't want any oil coming out of this end and messing up the paint. So little man woke up from his nap and he seems to be content enough sitting in his little bicycle trailer. It's what we use to pull behind the bikes, and he seems to be happy enough in there. He's got toys in there, and best of all, the lid latches, so it keeps him contained so he won't hurt himself in the shop here. He's not quite 2, and I don't really trust him to run around with tools yet. Yep, one happily playing little man. So we have the right hand and left hand bearing brackets, as they called in the manual. I guess that must be as you're facing the machine, as far as the orientation of that. This guy here has a first coat of gray paint. This side here doesn't need a coat because it's actually going in underneath the belt cover, so it doesn't need it. We've also got what they call their driving shaft here, because up here is where the clutch goes. So this is the driving shaft, is what they call it. And this part here is what they call the driving gear cluster. It's what slides back and forth for the two-speed gears that are in the two speeds that are actually geared in the shaper. They're moved back and forth with this shift fork. There's a little spot there, a little divot there that the screw here grabs to slide it back and forth as you pull and push on this knob. One thing is that this knob has a couple detents in it, or the shaft has a couple detents in it. Thing is, these detents work with this little hole here down inside that shaft, or down inside that journal. When I got the machine, it didn't really inspire a lot of confidence. There was this 3/8 UNC bolt jammed in the hole. What that does is that holds this little ball and spring there to work in the little holes on the shaft as the detents to hold it in place. I don't really like that. Like I was saying before with this thing, as I'm reassembling it and repairing things, I want to use Whitworth and British Association threads as much as possible. Now the bearing brackets themselves are held in with these flathead screws. I probably could use socket head cap screws if I could find some in Whitworth, but I'm not going to bother trying. I only have 8 of these. Each of these housings takes 5. I'll need to make 2. So in order to do that, I dug through my stash. I don't have any 12mm round rod, but I have a fair amount of 1/2 inch, and I figured I have some 4140 here, and I'll just make 2 more flathead screws for mounting the cases to the bearing brackets to the case. For that, I also picked up some 55-degree thread inserts for doing some of this threading. I do have a set of taps, but they're carbon steel, so I'm not entirely sure if I trust them for lasting super long. I mean, okay, we'll have a look at this. You know, here's our set of taps, and what I find amusing is they're called US Pro. I got them out of England, and judging by looking at the taps and dies themselves, I highly doubt these were made in the United States or England. Let's just put it that way. I don't really hold a lot of faith in them as far as them, lasting super long, cutting alloy steel. I'll I'll use them for chasing threads and cleaning out holes, not a problem, but I'm really kind of leery about using them in alloy. So let's start by making a few special fasteners like we were saying, then we'll clean up the gears, clean up the shafts, and we'll start reassembling the gear train into the machine. Now one thing about this is, I know I said 12mm because in the metric side it's just shy of 12mm, but seeing as it wasn't actually a metric built machine, or whatever, 0.465 or whatever, it really comes out to close to 15-30 seconds on the head size here. But if I just go to slightly under 12mm, then that'll be fine for a head size. I have the material chucked up here. I also have the spider set up on the other end because this is a bit of a longer one. It goes all the way through the headstock. I just don't want it whipping around at me. I should have enough length here to get 2 screws out of this, which is all we need. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by center drilling it here, putting a center in for supporting it because it is sticking out a ways, and then we'll peel it down to 12mm. Yep, that'll be enough. At 12.66, so 12.7, so we need to take roughly 0.8 of a millimeter off of it. .8-ish, 8.5, good enough. Good enough for what we need. we're going to have to readjust this. I'm going to move it back in the chuck a bit so it's grabbing here instead of back here. That way we don't have near as much stick out. Zero it up there. We'll take our Sharpie. Make a nice fat mark there. Set the caliper to roughly 1 inch. And that'll be our witness mark. We'll take the indicator, bring it right up to 2 inches. Reading. When this reads 1 inch, then I'll be at where my shoulder is. We need to turn the shank down. This one here is, well, 307, whatever. So yeah, 310-ish is 310, 307. It should give us enough tip clearance for the V shape of our thread profile. 7.8 millimeters. All right. 306, yeah, 305, 306, good enough. Yeah, that'll work. I'm going to use this tool to make the relief in the end for when we drop off from threading. 35 thou depth of thread. .35 thousandths. Now, I don't know if you can see that in the camera there. One of the things I like about doing it this way, instead of using the grooving tool, is that it leaves a very slight radius, probably a little bit more than I need, but there's a very slight radius at the back end of that relief groove. Square it off to the chuck. I've already set my compound rest to 27.5 degree angle, so that I can feed in with the compound, and then just keep resetting with the cross slide back to 0. And just scratching. There, so that's my 0. And let's do a scratch pass. And 55 degree thread pitch gauge, so 5/16 18 is what we're looking for. And yeah, I would call that 18, so we're good. Now, just out of curiosity, I got this straight out of China. This probably says something like thread pitch gauge or something, but if anybody knows Chinese, just, yeah, it'd be kind of curious to know what that actually says. So, grab a gin Deadman oil cap here. Well, I just took a cut there and it was starting to peel up quite a bit. Not quite starting, so I think I'm just going to take a scratch pass of where I was. Try it again. See if this will smooth it out a bit. You know something? I think we're going to roll with that. Yeah, I'm going to have to make a wider thread relief groove on the next one, but that will work just fine right there. I'm just going to cut it off here in the lathe, and like John says, just always make sure you got your lathe board. And we're going to cut this off a little more than we really need for cutting the head, because that way I can face it. So that should be enough. Give them another 1/16 or so. Into the pan it goes. So there's the first mostly done screw. We just need to face the head and put the slot in it. So what I need to do now is make another one of these. I'm going to do that off camera, and then we'll bring you back in for the next step. So I'm just going to cheat for facing off the front. I'm going to use the poor man's thread holding collet. Double nutted jammed up on the front and then one on the back for alignment, which is probably going to be the same collet system we're going to be using when we cut the slot in the front. We'll face it flat, figure out how tall it is, and then cut it to length. Not too bad. Now with the original screw head, I'm not going to take the paint into consideration. Our head is roughly 268 thousandths tall, or 6.8 millimeters, give or take. 9 millimeters, 355, 356. So we have about 90 thousandths to come off, or give or take 2.3 millimeters. Now it says 1 inch 90. When it says 1 inch, we're to length. Yeah, that's pretty much there. I'm probably being a little more persnickety than I need to be, but nice thing is I'm not running a production shop. If I had to be pushing deadlines, I'd probably be doing this faster. So there's the first one, the head there. I just need to cut the slot in it, and we have a bearing housing mount screw. I'm going to do the other one off camera, and I'll bring you in when I'm ready to do the milling. So here we are at the mill. I've got the slitting saw in its arbor, mounted in a collet, and one nice thing is I found that the slot on the top of the screw head is just within a few thousandths of the 60 thou blade that we have in here. The other thing I've measured, the slot itself is about 80 thousandths deep. So what we're going to do is take our, well, very simple indexing method here, and I'm clamping on the flats of the hex, not the points. I'll slide a nut in the back side here just to avoid canting the jaws. There. And bring this up. That looks near as darn to center to me. Grab my glasses. The glasses come on before I power up any equipment. I may sometimes be a bit of a crazy nut, but I'm not stupid. And then what we'll do is, I think we'll just take it all in one pass. What we'll do is we'll touch off. There we go. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a difficulty trying to get a good angle on this one until we get past about the halfway mark. Alright, and you can see in the one view there, coming out the backside, that's pretty much what we were asking for. I'll cut the slot in the other one just the same, then we'll move on to making the other couple fasteners we need before putting the bearing housings on. So I think we'll have to cut it off about there. Again, I don't want to get too long. We'll pick it up next time and keep putting this thing back together. Believe me, I want to see it together at least as much as you do, because I want to start making chips, and I've already got a few projects in mind that I want to use this thing for. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Even if you aren't subscribing, that's cool. Thanks for coming to hang out in my shop with me, and I'll see y'all next time.